Hi everyone, welcome to this video. This is going to be another painting tutorial for the plastic range from Wargames Atlantic, part of their Age of Chivalry. Today we're going to be doing the Peasant Levy. Again, as with the other ones, I'll be painting these to fit in with my Baron's War range. And I've started these off in a similar way as I have with Sergeants with the Hyrax brown undercoat. I've gone for a selection of poses. We've got a slinger, we've got a guy here with a pitchfork, got a guy here with like a threshing hook sort of thing. We've got a Levy dude here who's got a sword and a shield, but old style shield. Very tatty, knackered sword. And then finally we've got a guy with a bow. So a little bit of a selection. We'll start off first with some dry brushes on the Hyrax brown, just to sort of like pick out the highlights on the cloth for these guys, because there are a lot of them. There's 30 in a box. We need to paint these fast in order to sort of like get them on the table. So hopefully this is useful, and let's get on with it. So the first step I've taken after undercoating them is to give them a dry brush. I first did a dry brush with Vallejo's model colour chocolate brown, which virtually did nothing, so you could easily skip that. I then used their Panzer Aces Flat Earth for a highlight, for a dry brush, and finally their game colour leather brown. To be honest, I probably could have skipped the first two, so the chocolate brown and the flat earth, but I wanted to sort of like try and just pick out any areas where it might be slightly different. So I focused mainly on getting the dry brush on the things like the legs, because it means I don't have to go back and do legs again. The pole weapons, and then, for example, the bow and the legs. And I will leave certain areas of these brown. So some of the cloaks, some of the hoods I'll leave brown, but the others I will come over and give them a base coat of an actual colour, just to sort of like break up the uniformity a bit. This guy, it was mainly about getting back of the shield and again the legs. But you can see these do dry brush very nicely. This is a very rough dry brush. The definition on the models is good, so it's come out nicely. So what we'll do next is we will go through and we'll pick out some of the base colours. So first up it will be things like base coating the flesh, base coating some of the metal, and then base coating some of the cloth colours. So there's a handful of paints I like to use for things like this pretty consistently. So I'll use mahogany brown for the first coat of the flesh tone. I like to use cavalry brown, as it gives us sort of like a dark reddish brown. I will do some things red, so that'll just be Vallejo red. I like to use their heavy green, or heavy grey, sorry, and heavy green. They both give us sort of like a slightly different shade of green. For anything slightly lighter, I'll use Iraqi sand. For things that might be sort of like with a yellow hint to them, we'll use bronze flesh tone. And then this is a new colour that I got, dark sea blue. It's a very dark blue, but it can give a quite nice effect. I don't want these to be too colourful, but I also don't want them to be too dull and boring. So that'll be the selection of colours we use on these guys. So I'll go ahead, set down some of the base colours, and then come back and show you exactly how they're looking. So for anyone else who's watched my other painting guides for these models, for the other Wargames Atlantic models, this will be a bit of Groundhog Day, but blocking the colours in, and you can see if you've watched my other videos, I use a very similar palette throughout, same sort of colours. This guy, I've kept the tunic untouched because it's brown already, so easy peasy. Or for greens, browns, muted colours for the Levy, because obviously they'll be quite poor, so they're not buying expensive fabric or expensive dyes. And the last one's this archer. I do like this colour. This is mahogany brown from Vallejo. It's a really nice sort of like reddish brown. I use it a lot on leathers and cloths and things. It's quite a nice colour. So what we'll do, as with the other batches I've done, they'll get a wash of watered down strong tone. For the guy with yellow, we'll go for a little bit of red tone mixed into that, just to sort of like, it just helps keep the warm hue to the yellow as we go. So we'll go ahead and wash them. After they're washed, I'll come back and show you what they look, and then we can move on to the detailing stage. So with the wash done, you can see these guys are looking much nicer. The tone of the base coat colours has been sort of like pulled back a notch, so they're a little bit more, colour is a bit more muted. We've got some nice shading in the recesses, which will obviously then be adding highlights to the upper areas, to the raised areas. You'd have to be careful, I mentioned it on one of the other videos with these, that they might pull in certain areas, so you have to go round just sort of like, you know, a couple of minutes after you've applied the wash to make sure that you dab away anything that pulls. But these guys now, they'll be getting another layer of the base coat, and then we'll be highlighting them, just adding either sort of like lighter variants of the colour, or where necessary things like tan or sand colours to try and just sort of like raise the highlight areas a bit more. But as I've done with the other videos, I'll do a little bit and then I'll come and show you as I'm in the process of doing it, so that you can see the difference that the highlighting makes to these. So here are the first completed Levy troops. Now I've batch painted these, so that means I've not rushed them, but I've also not spent as much time as I might do sometimes for my models. So you'll notice there's a big difference between what we saw at this stage and the last stage. What I do is I go away and I highlight each of the colours, and when I'm batch painting, as I did with these guys, I'll paint the same sort of colours at the same time. So, for example, the hood here, the tunic on this guy, the hood on this one, the sleeves there. So I'll just go through the number of them, and I'll go sort of like, you know, okay, well, this colour's this colour's that. This guy was a bit unique because of the yellow, but then you can see his trousers and his sleeves are the same colour. So I just generally tend to like sort of like bust through one colour at a time. Now, when I'm highlighting, I'll normally start off with the base colour. So if you've seen my video on the knights, I explained how I do the yellow, starting off with the bronze flesh tone, adding some flat white, and then finally finishing it off with some either off-white or, if needs be, some cold white, which is like a pure, brilliant white sort of colour. For these guys, they had some slightly different colours because they got more earthy tones. So we've got the extra opaque heavy grey, which is actually more green. But I follow a similar sort of process. So if I want to highlight this one, I'll add some Iraqi sand. It's like a beige colour. The same with the wood, I'll add some beige. The same even with the red. So because I want it to look like quite a washed out colour, I'll take the original Chivalry brown and I'll mix it with some Iraqi sand. So it just gives that sort of like, you know, a bit more, less saturated tone to it. But these models, I mean, I'm loving how they're looking. My favourite one, I think, is possibly this guy with the pitchfork, who looks great. I'll take some photos as well so you can see properly. As I'm painting these sort of like tabletop standard, I've not painted the eyes. So the faces are essentially just, I start off with the, there we go, mahogany brown, and then I add slightly more, for each layer I add a little bit more sort of like, I don't know, what is this one? This is basic skin tone. And then at the end, I'll normally add a little bit of white as well. I try to focus on picking out areas that you can actually see. So the cheeks, the nose, the forehead, and the lips, if necessary. Some of them have got a bit more of the face covered. So this guy here is essentially just the cheeks. And I've picked out the teeth as well, because of course he seems to be shouting there. Really like this one. I like the arrow through the shield. And for this guy as well, I love Really like the sort of like hat he's wearing. I think that's come out really nice. Ooh. That's come out very nicely. Highlighted the beards. Pretty much I just essentially go over everything again and highlight it slightly. And then when I feel like I've highlighted it all enough and I've done all the colours, that's it, they're finished. So here's the first batch of Peasant Levy ready for the tabletop. Since the last video, I've finished off the basing and added a little bit of weathering. I've gone quite easy on these guys, mainly just using Iraqi sand to add some splotches to the bottom of the tunics. This slinger at the end here has got a little bit of German camo brown and a little bit on this guy wearing the yellow tunic. I've tried not to go too over the top because I don't want to go make them too grimy and horrible. They are peasants, but they've got a little bit of dignity, I suppose, haven't they? But I really enjoyed this kit. They're brilliant because they're going to work well for other games I play. So they will work well for sort of like villages for Lord of the Rings. If I ever get around to playing anything for Saga, they'll work perfectly for sort of like village peasants. And there's a great number of options in the kit. There's so many options that actually there's almost a little bit too much. Not that I'm going to complain. The kit bash that I painted up this time, obviously the guy with the shield, I think that's worked really nicely. Using a helmet from the Sergeant pack, and it's worked quite well. So hopefully this has been useful for people. If you've got any of the other Wargames Atlantic kits, please check out my other painting guides. I've done the Knights and I've also done the Foot Sergeants. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. And keep an eye out for new videos coming soon. Cheers.